gone through this, you might have to just do this.
There you go. There you go.
You caught that.
Big guy's got to watch out there.
Well, good afternoon. I'm King County Executive Dow Constantine. I was at Seacrest Dock in West Seattle this morning to greet water taxi commuters as they faced the first day of viaduct closure. Make sure they had a donut and a cup of coffee as they contemplate the commutes to come. It was cold and it was dark, but I'm here to report people were upbeat. They were eager after all the months and years of talk to get on with this and to get through the next few weeks. And for those of us who stayed around long enough, we got to enjoy a spectacular sunrise over the Cascades. I'm glad to report that we doubled water taxi service, adding a second boat, but we have tripled this morning the number of riders over this time last year. And even with that, there is still capacity for more folks to take the water taxi from West Seattle to downtown. There's no doubt that commute times will have lengthened today and that people's patience will be stretched. We're seeing some pinch points, particularly I think coming in from the north end, where 99 has been narrowed to one lane as you approach downtown Seattle. And folks will be able to talk a little bit more about that. We've planned for this day for many, many months. State, county, city officials, folks in the community all pulling together to get to full deployment mode. Well, we have extra staff right here at Metro's Transit Control Center, ready to respond as conditions change on the roads. We have 20 extra buses, 20 extra coaches that our staff is able to deploy to the places where they're most needed on a moment's notice. And we have extra mechanics and other staff at the ready to make sure that we do not miss an opportunity to try to smooth the commuting challenges. For a snapshot of today's morning commute, I'm going to turn it over to our Metro Deputy General Manager, Terry White. Terry.
Thank you, Executive, and good afternoon for you all. We thought it would be a good idea for you to come down and see our control center. As the Executive has mentioned, a lot of planning has been taking place to get us to this point. And we're now at the point where we turn that over to the control center, and they are very adept at adjusting and calling the audibles that make the service actually work and become as reliable as we expect. So with that planning, then you turn into how many things can go wrong in a day and how many things can we actually adjust to on the fly to get our services out. As you're aware, 12 of our routes came off of the Alaska Viaduct here on Friday at 8 p.m. And they're now running their rerouted services through the Soto district. That means some customers and riders got to take that initial journey together. It went well, and we ask that customers and riders be patient as we work through some of the kinks in that process. This morning was our first true test of this commute conditions, and as we expected or hoped, it went fairly smoothly. I want to emphasize this at this point, that no matter what we see in the next 3 weeks, we're going to work to keep people moving. We saw some key bottlenecks, as the Executive mentioned, one leading from the south, from the north end coming south on the Aurora area. Some of that was expected. Coming across the water taxi bridge here, buses use our new extended lane, and we are very appreciative of the Seattle Police who have helped with that process, as well as helping with some of the intersections that clear and make travel more expedited and reliable. As the Executive mentioned, we have 20 standby coaches. We use those between the hours of 5:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. During this commute today, we used those coaches for 23 trips, and we carried approximately 350 riders. Most were primarily on the 120 route and the Rapid Ride E-Line. We will have those 20 coaches available again during the PM commute. and we will, through the use of the TCC, deploy them wherever we see fit to expedite and keep traffic moving. I want to pause here and thank our 3,000 plus transit operators for their diligence, for showing up, for preparing, boots on the ground, ready to go during this tough time. I also want to thank our facilities folks for getting our coaches ready to go out onto the road, some showing up early as well. The control center, I want to thank them just for being here with their quick thinking and acting to put buses where they're needed most. And I want to say a special praise to our new partners, the water taxi. As the executive has mentioned, we doubled our service there, and today we tripled the amount of riders that rode the service last year at this exact same time. Congestion-free service across the water. I want to emphasize that. Congestion-free service across the water. It is the way to go. So for some numbers, the water taxi carried 1,350 passengers this morning. That's compared to 350 at the same time last year. And we're operating at about 50%. So we have room for capacity. Our Ride 2 pilot project services carry today 156 riders from West Seattle down to the junction or down to the water taxi docks. This was our first day of commute, and while we're glad it's in our rearview mirror, we need to be ready for what's coming, PM and the weeks to come. This is going to be a marathon, and while we are happy and glad that the state has made progress on the State Route 99 project, and we're certainly looking forward to the tunnel opening on Friday, I wish, in February. Until then, riders should pad their schedules. Think 30 to 60 minutes in advance. Pad your travel times. We will do the best we can to move, but we're going to be moving hundreds of thousands of people that'll be traveling and making day-to-day decisions on their commutes. That can be very unpredictable. We're still encouraging folks to avoid traveling during the peak hours, to telecommute when they can, and work flex schedules. And my favorite piece of this is take transit. It is still much better than driving alone in traffic. And we're thankful for all the people out there who gave us a try today. We're hoping traffic conditions to continue to flow smoothly, and we thank you in advance for your patience when traffic doesn't flow as expected. We're going to gather some more comprehensive ridership estimates for you, and we'll have those available in the next weeks to come. Now, no matter what we see, again, in the next 3 weeks, we're going to keep people moving. So at this time, we're going to open it up for some questions for myself, Bill Bryant, and the executive, and then we're going to make the TCC, the control center, available to you so that you get some shots.
Some routes, they'd said in advance that people would make decisions on the fly, changing routes and so forth. We heard from a lot of our readers that there were a lot of things that hadn't been heralded. There was a stop at the light rail station, for example. Where are those decisions being made? Are they being made here in response to conditions on the buses, or? All
Responses that are happening on the fly are happening at this control center. So we have a director of our department operations center. Everything funnels through into that person. They make decisions and then they're dispersed out so that we're actually coordinating our efforts in the field.
Any changes that you made that we can tell people about that they can expect tomorrow, and decisions to add a particular stop on a particular run?
We'll have another meeting a little later on today to assess what's happened during the morning commute. And we'll start to try to figure out what our game plan is for tomorrow, but we're still waiting for some of that information to come in from the field.
How fast would you be able to add additional stops downtown or elsewhere?
Additional stops, if we can call an audible pretty quickly. So depending on what the need is and what we do, we can actually turn fairly quickly. How we get that information out, communicated to customers, is equally as important. So that's the piece where we got to make sure that we've informed our customers of where we are. Doesn't do us any good if we move a bus and nobody's there.
Do you have any reason to believe that this is one of those scenarios where people will hold back the first day or two, and then there'll be a crush of people trying to get into downtown?
Absolutely. Monday, Tuesday, We anticipated that there would be a lot of folks who would hold back. I almost didn't make it in myself. Okay. But going forward, we think that can flip. This is going to be, we're going to be here for some weeks, so we need to be diligent and careful that we don't react too quickly to what we think is happening in the moment, so that we're ready for when the tide changes, if you will.
You got any feedback from the bus drivers themselves talking about people cooperating and making it easier for them?
We haven't heard a whole lot of negative components out in the field, so the bus drivers are working with our control center staff as well. Today has been relatively smooth on those types of fronts, so we'll see how it continues to go. We're hopeful that it continues that way.
Given the 2 shuttles that go around West Seattle to drop off at the water taxi, did you have any numbers from those this morning? And again, a comparison to what they might have been at this time last year?
So I don't have numbers yet, but what I've heard is they were operating at capacity. Not standing, but capacity. So we'll keep an eye on that because that'll be critical to how we continue to service the water taxi.
Let me say a word or two about that. Since we're talking about the water taxi, I mean, yes, the shuttles were quite full. There's still room for parking at Pier 2, which is one of the lots that we made available, and we actually have an additional shuttle coming from there to the water taxi dock. I would encourage folks in West Seattle in particular to find the best way for them to get to that dock, because there is the capacity and it's never going to get, the boat's never going to get stuck in traffic. So whether it's a shuttle, whether it's number 37, whether you're able to drive yourself or wake your spouse up or your teenager and get them to drop you at the dock, or your neighbor, or ride your bike down as many people did today. There are a lot of different ways to get to that one point, and once you're there, you don't really have to plan for the boat schedule, because they're now coming every 15 to 20 minutes, so you can just wait around, have a cup of coffee, and be ready to hop on and get to where you need to be. I even talked with some folks who work in Soto, and their commute is usually across the West Seattle Bridge and then north, but they had decided to take the water taxi, walk to the Pioneer Square rail station, and take the train south, knowing that they would have a fairly predictable commute. So folks are adapting, and again, there are a lot of options. And on your question, Patrick, about the shuttle capacity, if we find that the shuttle's having to leave people at the curb, we will find a way to make an adjustment and add more capacity to that. And again, on the question of people letting down their guard after the first couple days, I believe that is a pretty strongly established pattern. Folks plan and they get up really early, or they work from home, and then after a couple days they don't see things being too bad, so they all pile back in their cars. Please don't do that this week. Really, you know, maintain your vigilance over the course of the week. If you want to alter your commute time so it's not right in the heart of the rush hour, it's helpful. If you want to take alternatives like the rapid ride or the water taxi, it will be better for your commute. And try to really see that through so that we don't end up in the situation we've seen before, where the third day is the day everyone goes back to normal, and then we end up with a big traffic mess. Others? This is a fascinating facility. I'm glad you're all here to see it. This is really the nerve center of the operation, and you can see as you go through how folks here are able to view all of the traffic and the vehicles that are out on the road and make adjustments that help keep the commute flowing. So you want to tell people how to go about this tour?
So actually, I think I'm going to turn the tour portion over to Mr. Walmsley. I know you didn't know that was coming, but Jeff actually oversees, supervises the Transit Control Center, and he may have a cadence he'd like us to go through so as we can, at a minimum, disrupt what's going on in the services. But this is Jeff Walmsley over here. He is the superintendent of the Transit Control Center.
Okay, sure.
So
So how many